Good afternoon. This panel will focus on one of the paths to move us forward to a society where opportunities abound for all, and that's education. It's a sad fact that despite the billions of dollars spent on public education and the passage of desegregation laws, two phenomena remain: the persistent achievement gap between white, black, and Hispanic students, and the vestiges of historic residential segregation patterns that concentrate minority students in predominantly urban, poor-performing schools. So what should we do? Our panelists today all have specific programmatic solutions, some academic, some cultural, but our conversation today will focus on 4 key points: the characteristics of academic success and impediments to that success, the impact of family structure and parenting styles on academic outcomes, the nexus between academic achievement and professional opportunity, and the potential interventions and educational reforms that may lead to better academic outcomes within communities at risk. We have a large panel. I'm going to ask each panelist to limit their comments to 5 minutes, and I am going to very much abbreviate the introduction so we can get right to the discussion. We're going to go from the far left with Mr. Armour first, who is a professor of public policy at George Mason University with a Ph.D. in sociology from Harvard, and he is the author of many books. Most relevant for this discussion, his 1995 publication called Forced Justice: School Desegregation in the Law, and his 2003 book, Maximizing Intelligence, and his most recent paper, Can No Child Left Behind Close the Achievement Gap, published in 2009. I'm going to allow him to make his comments and then introduce each panelist before they speak. Go ahead from your seat.
From the seat, Great. Thank you. I was recruited to this panel fairly recently, like this morning, so my comments may be a little disorganized. I want to say 3 things. First, I got into the field of research and education by having the privilege to work on the Coleman Report, 1965, that was commissioned by the Civil Rights Act. And from that time on, for the next 20 years, I focused on whether school desegregation had an impact on achievement. And that was one of the conclusions of the original Coleman Report. After many years of research, I decided that I concluded that it really did not have a substantial impact on achievement, and that was published in my 1995 book. I got interested at that point in, if desegregation isn't going to close the achievement gap, what are the causes of the achievement gap? And then I spent another 10 years or so researching that question, using some of the really good longitudinal data that we have now on the issue of what kinds of factors contribute to achievement gaps among children. Basically, my research concluded with where a lot of social scientists have come down, that family background and socioeconomic status are huge impacts and are the predominant causes of these achievement gaps. And I also want to emphasize, I believe what an earlier panelist said, that these gaps are actually measurable as early as age 3. And those gaps are large. The public schooling doesn't actually enhance those gaps or decrease them. They sort of perpetuate those achievement gaps. The second thing I found in that research was that the single most important one of these family characteristics was single-parent families. In that sense, I really concur with the observations of a lot of other panelists that, in fact, a single-parent family, it's not easy to see statistically. It isn't a huge correlation, but it has a big an indirect effect, because single-parent families have less income, and they especially have less parenting resources. That issue of 2 parents account for a lot compared to 1 parent can be demonstrated in a lot of good research on the family effects on achievement. Then the third thing I did is I turned to schools. Okay, so if we agree that the achievement gap is there from the start of schooling, can schools overcome that gap? And that's really been the thorniest question. That's the one most debated by educational researchers. The problem is that school effects that we do know are generally, when we do find them, they're very small. So you have the SES, the family background effects that are very large. You have school programmatic effects, whether you're talking about school resources, classroom size, even the quality of teachers, their effects are very small. How do you use those effects to overcome this very large one standard deviation gap that children have, black and white children have when they start school? Basically, I have concluded so far that, and I put it this way, we do not have a known technique, a known technology that we can export from all schools, to all schools, that can close the gap using purely social school program and resources. That has left me to return back to the family, and I think that's where I think we have to turn, as many panelists have said here before. We have to somehow challenge that issue. We have to confront that issue, and I think, as I'm a sociologist, I agree that it's a cultural issue more than anything else. And there has to be, I think, first a commitment that there is a problem. Right now, we don't acknowledge that that's a problem in society. I think that failure to acknowledge the problem is a barrier in some way to trying to solve or resolve that issue. So I think that we can't fix a problem or work on that problem until we acknowledge that it is a problem. And that's where I think there is disagreement. We heard some disagreement about that in this panel. But that's where I come down on the issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Armour. Next, we have Jenny Niles, who is the founder and currently leads the E.L. Haynes Public Charter School, located here in the District of Columbia. E.L. Haynes is one of the highest achieving schools in D.C. and has been recognized nationally for its student growth over the past 3 years. Ms. Niles.
Great. Well, I am honored to be here, and I've actually learned about joining the panel about an hour ago. So I'm just hoping I get a little bit more of your gentle encouragement and laughter. But there is not a topic that is closer to my heart than the one that we're speaking about today. The reason that our school, I think, has been able to move towards closing the achievement gap, and unfortunately we are not there yet, is that we start with the underpinnings that every student of ours is capable of reaching high levels of academic achievement, regardless of what background that they join us. That doesn't necessarily mean that students who have aspects of their lives outside of school that make it tough don't impact their schooling, but we've been able to demonstrate that, that we've been able to make a tremendous difference in their lives, and in fact have been moving to dramatically close that gap. As you probably know, a public charter school has 3 things that's consistent across the country. One is that it's publicly funded. 2 is that it has an open random lottery to admit students. And the 3rd is that it's an accountability agreement, meaning that if I am not able for our school to produce results, the chartering authority can close down our school, can pull our charter. I am somebody who, while I am passionate about education reform, the fact that we're a charter school just happens to be the format that we find is most useful to do what we need to do about being a high-performing school and about being a high-performing institution. I don't, and I can talk about those kinds of things if you are interested in it later. I think that one of the things that was mentioned to me, that parental engagement is of particular interest, especially given different family structures that we have of students who attend our school. Our school, the basic belief is that every single one of our parents wants the best for their child, and that's the absolute starting point that we have for all of our families. We have 100% parent participation, and we have that because we will, I sometimes like to say, love parents to death, or drip, 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 drip. We will keep calling, keep calling. I've arrived at grocery stores to meet a grandparent who is my checkout, the person at my local checkout, to have a conference about a student. I've gone into offices. We'll go anywhere and do anything to make sure that that parent feels connected with our school, because that is one of the key pieces for kids' success, although we actually still have had success when parents haven't been able to engage, and certainly when they're not able to engage at the same levels. I think that I will close with, I meant to mention this before, but just so that you have a sense, when we first opened the school, our first year, our scores, and DC, for those of you who are from DC, are very familiar with the DC CAS, that's our state level test. We started out with having 30% of our children proficient or advanced in reading, and 20% of them proficient and advanced in math. This year we had 67% of those kids proficient or advanced in reading and 70% in math. So that's a great increase. And for our, just to look at, and when we look at the different subgroups, while we haven't closed the gap, we have dramatically reduced it. So most of our subgroups are nearly at that 60% mark as well. But thank you for inviting me today.